check. Good. So I'm Max Ceron. Max Ceron, CWBA Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hey, and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I'm with you guys again. As always here, you guys, I'm super glad you guys have been tuning in. The numbers are looking good, and we're having tons of fun. On today's show, we got Josh Zolin. I hope I'm saying that right.
That's right.
And you
That's
guys
right.
may or
Thank
may
you,
not...
Max, for
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, buddy. Sorry. No, I just wanted to thank you for having me on the show, buddy. I wasn't sure if you were done with your spiel yet or not, but clearly you weren't. So why don't you keep going with that?
That's all good. Just so people get a little bit of background on you. You know, you got a book out, The Blue is the New White. You got a podcast out. You got a career now that you've kind of ran on this idea. And if people don't know about what's going on in Josh Zolin's life, that's what we're going to figure out today. Right on. So, first of all, Zolin. What is that? What nationality is that? Not too many names start with a Z.
Actually, I'm not entirely sure. My dad was adopted. So we're not sure his exact nationality. But his adopted parents, my grandparents, from what I understand, came out from Europe. They're Jewish, but I'm not sure the actual nationality of where they're from, and there was not a whole lot of backstory in the paternal side of my family, so it remains a mystery, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. So it's weird. I remember being a kid, and there's not a lot of adopted kids that you would run into. And now I feel like I'm in my 40s now, and like 3 of my 5 closest friends are adopted. And I think it's like not as rare a thing like for a while now, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I've known quite a few adopted people myself.
All right, so Josh, your background here, from what I understand, is you started off kind of as a tradesperson. So where did you grow up? Like where was your roots at, and like what was your first job kind of thing?
um, so my roots aren't traditional. I'll say that. I was born in Northridge, California. That's where I lived until I was about 5. Don't remember much of it. I don't have that good a memory. Actually, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So I guess that would make sense, right? But I spent the majority of my youth in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in the Midwest, and grew up on a farm. Not a typical farm. My entire family is in the stunt industry, was in the stunt industry. My whole maternal side, my grandfather was one of the trailblazers in the stunt industry, doubled for Charles Bronson and Elvis Presley, and a couple of the old time greats. And that was my first real actual job, right? I was in that business since I was young. It's what I knew. It's what I loved. And I'm not talking about, in high school,
Like you were 7 years
the typical
old.
jobs that you had. Yeah, right, exactly. So, um, so I grew up on that farm. What I did kind of set me apart from the crowd, I guess you could say. Um, and when I think it was 15 when I started teaching a school. So my grandfather started the first ever stunt school in California. My mom subsequently then started her own stunt school in the Midwest when we lived in Kenosha. And then I started teaching that school when I was 15. And then that was only in the summers. So um, the other times of the year, I just held some odd jobs, worked at Home Depot for a little while, Best Buy for a little while. So got to know my tools when I worked at Home Depot, and got to establish my sales side when I worked at Best Buy. So, mix of everything in there.
Yeah, so you came into a family business, and I also grew up with like working with my family since I was a kid. My dad was a steel worker, but he always worked in shops, and that was my gig since I was little. Now, did you know that you didn't want to do that? you still kind of want to do that? I
Y-
see like you're still connected to IMDb. So like I mean, you're are you
Oh,
still
you did do your
oh
research,
yeah,
huh?
no, and like I'm in there too, right? Because I used to work in some in Hollywood for building cars for movie sets, right? So um, I get the pull of that, but did you see that as like this is what I'm going to do when I grow up?
Yeah, at the time I did. Little did I know that that was really just my ego talking. I liked what I did because of how it made people look at me,
Awesome.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I liked what I did because it set me apart and it was unique and I was good at it. Right. It wasn't until actually I graduated high school and then moved out to Hollywood and started doing it professionally that I realized maybe this isn't exactly what I want to do.
Was it the business side of it that was kind of crummy, or
It
well,
was.
yeah,
Yeah, it was the bureaucracy. It was the who not what you know. It was honestly, the biggest thing for me was that I knew I wanted to. I always had an entrepreneurial mindset. I was always the kid in high school and middle school that when they would do fundraisers and stuff like that. I mean, I lived on a farm, right? So my closest neighbor was like a half mile down the road, and then the next one was a half mile down the road again. And I mean, I would be the kid on my bike going door to door, down these country roads, just trying to sell and sell and sell. I started a business when I was 12 called S&J Odd Jobs, where literally I just, can I do something and will you pay me for it? Kind of thing. So I've always had that entrepreneurial mindset. I think it was ingrained in me. Um, and so with that, I think there was a big part of me really that wanted to be recognized. And in the stunt industry, look, the bottom line is the point is you're not recognized,
yeah.
right? You're doubling for somebody who is recognized, and so I think for a lot of reasons, it just as I grew up and as I understood myself a little bit more and what I wanted out of life, it took about 2 years of being in Hollywood or so for me to recognize that. But once I did, that's when things became a little bit more clear.
Yeah, so you're looking at it from that point. I mean, there's unions involved. There's, layers of
Hmm.
bureaucracy into any type of multi-million dollar business. They start layering, levels of your bureaucracy. It creates like the bubbles in which they can protect themselves with at the end of the day, right? But when you jumped out of that now, like I see the company that you have now, companies you've worked with, those don't seem like an obvious connect there. Like what was the path that led you out of this film industry now, and all of a sudden you're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to get into technical equipment and contractual equipment and contracting for
Yeah.
small business. Like that seems like not a direct path there.
No, it definitely wasn't. I get asked that question a lot. And what it was this. My dad was also in the stunt business. But when he and my mom split, he was only able to see me every other weekend, right? So in the stunt business, there's a lot of travel involved and, a lot of nights away from home. And he didn't want to miss any weekends from with me, being his only son at the time. And so he got out of that business and started working as a foreman at a bakery in Chicago. And so eventually he wanted to develop his skills and move somewhere warmer. So when I was about 17, before I went to Hollywood, he had moved out to Arizona to fix restaurant equipment. Basically, he worked for a company for about a year or so and then decided to go off on his own. And so he was in Arizona while I was in California, in the stunt business, and I knew that he had his own business and it was just him turning wrenches and doing what he did. I had no idea what that was though, right? I mean he got into that field when I was older. I didn't really take an interest into it, because I'm walking red carpets and flaunting the fact that I can light myself on fire and not get hurt. And
Or not
so
not too
I didn't.
hurt.
Right, at the time I didn't really care. I just I wanted him to be happy. But at the end of the day, again, my entrepreneurial spirit came out, right? So when I realized that the stunt industry is not one that I wanted to be in, I reached out to my dad and I said, "Hey, I know it's just you, running this business, and I know that I know nothing about it. Uh, but if I leave Hollywood behind and come out and work with you? Will you teach me and allow me to learn from you and try to grow this business?" And of course, my dad, being as supportive as he is, he was like, "Yeah, absolutely, come on out." So
So like
that's how that happened.
you're going out there. I mean, when you don't really know what the path is, sometimes there's a freedom in that, right? Like there's an old saying that when the destination is unknown, any path leads you there. So if you're heading now there, you are looking at this. How long did it take coming in with your dad and working with him before you found your entrepreneurial spirit now kind of being like, hey, dad, we could do some improvements around here. We can start, noticing the things that people that enter the trades or business immediately with that spirit, you start finding, inefficiencies is the fancy word, but just things around you could find working better. How was that in your dad's shop?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because when I when I immediately got out to Arizona and I started working with him, I thought I made a huge mistake, right? Because it was completely unlike anything that I had ever done, right? I was used to just a completely different environment and atmosphere. I slept in late. Went to bed late, and this was flip flopped, right? So I was getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock every morning with him. And at the time, my dad's super old school, so he's like, if you want to learn this, you got to start at the very bottom, which I thank him for. I mean, I love that about him, and I love that he had the foresight to be able to take me down that path first. But I wasn't making a ton of money, right? So I'd work with him from like 5 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, and then I would deliver pizzas from 7 o'clock at night to 11 o'clock at night, and then get up and do it all over again. So after about 2 years of doing that, then at that point, I started to understand a little bit more about how the service industry worked, about what our main objective was on the street. Obviously, I was learning how to turn the wrenches, how to fix the actual equipment, which was super important to understand if I wanted to really grow the business the way that I had hoped one day. And after that point, that's when he kind of introduced me to the back end of things, the scheduling, the invoicing, um, all of that stuff. And my dad will be he's the first to tell you, right? He's not a businessman, he's a mechanic. So as soon as I saw the books on the back end, like, I didn't know much, but I knew that wasn't right, you know. And so my first task was to clean all that up, right, and make sure all the because I mean it was a super old school company. I mean it was
Paper
rubbing
receipts
elbows,
everywhere.
paper receipts. I mean we weren't even accepting credit cards at the time. It was just, hey, give me the cash or check when the job is done, and let's go on to the next one. Here's your carbon copy, and so I got my arms around that. And once I understood both sides, once I understood the field and then the back office, that's when things started to click with me. And I started to say, okay, there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, for sure. I just started a new job. I'm working for the CWB now full time, but I just came from the college. I was working at a college for 7 years, and that is a huge disconnect that we hear about from the workplace. Often is that we can get the hard skills, but we need that mating with the soft skills that's missing. And up until recently, really, it's been like there's the path to the left, there's the path to the right. Pick one. They don't intermingle. There's no children in the middle. And now, fast forward 50 years of this cycle of economy, everyone's realizing like, oh man, the soft skills that we just took for granted are now gone, and we need to reintegrate this back into the practical workforce. And we spent 2 years developing a new program, which we're really proud of. It's called the Innovative Manufacturing Program, where it's literally what you just said. You're going to learn to run the tools. It's not the focus. You're not a mechanic. You're not going to get hired as a mechanic, but you're also not going to be completely ignorant. Like you're going to be able to get over the fear. It's more of a fear of the unknown. You're afraid of the tool, so you're not going to jump in there. But if you know the tool, then you're comfortable grabbing it and figuring it out. And it's the same on the back end with the soft skills. You're afraid of the computer. You're afraid of making an Excel spreadsheet. Well, man, that's a tool that you need to know how to use. Like,
That's right.
okay,
That's right.
so how did your dad feel about this? Was he like, right on, rearrange my world, go for it, or was there a little bit of pushback?
Yeah, no, again, he's always been so supportive. I think it was almost a relief to him, that somebody was willing to rearrange his world. And I remember one example specifically. My dad, because he started this business with his bare hands, right, and it was just him running for so long. It had been a long time since he had taken any time off. I mean, he missed weddings and funerals and vacations and just whatever. I mean, I had a little brother at this point in time. I know that he had missed a lot of you know, uh,
The
uh,
sports and the stuff, yeah.
softball games,
Hmm.
sports, stuff like that. So really, you know, I was excited to be able to give him a little bit of relief with that kind of stuff because I know I didn't, even though I didn't know what he did for a living, I knew that he busted his ass, right? I knew that
Hmm.
he worked hard, day in day out, and that's just who he was. So I remember a cousin of mine passed away, and my dad really wanted to go to the funeral. And I said, okay, you know what? Go to the funeral, take care of what you need to take care of. You deserve this, you need this, and the family needs you there, quite frankly. And so he went, he forwarded the phones to me, and never forwarded them back to his phone. I mean, at that point, I had the phones. He didn't take another phone call for the entirety of the company, unless it was somebody that
It was
had his
Uncle Joe,
direct
yeah.
line. That yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, that's really I think when I realized, okay, what I have, what I can bring to the table here is really beneficial for my dad's quality of life and his well-being.
So for you, that was probably also like the point where it's like, yes, now all the phone calls are coming to me. There's not going to be any weird, unknown things that pop up randomly that I didn't know about, right? Because now you're gaining control.
Yeah, well, a little bit. It's a double-edged sword, and
Yeah,
I'll tell
yeah,
anybody this. There's a lot of people out there that think entrepreneurship and business ownership is fantastic because you get to be your own boss, right? You get to make your own hours, you get to make the rules, you get to do anything you want to do because you control it all, and that can't be further from the truth. Everything controls you, and
yeah, yeah.
that's the cold hard truth. And so once I got those phones and I had those phones myself, without having anybody else to forward them to for 3 or 4 years. I'm taking calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, consistently because we offer service 24 hours a day. What else were we supposed to do? And my dad taught me from day one, every time that phone rings, you know, that's when the dollars come in.
Yeah.
We got to think about the dollars and cents if we want to keep this business going. Um, so it was, yes, it was a good feeling to kind of take the reins a little bit, but I don't know that I was entirely prepared for what was about to come, which is fine. I don't think I would have
Yeah.
ever been completely prepared, and that's where experience comes in, right?
Yeah.
That's where you have to jump in with both feet, take the bull by the horns, as they say, and
Hmm.
let the rest ride.
And it's so interesting that you say that, like, because there really is no complete autonomy in any business because you're just a part of the chain, right? Like if you decide to create a business, what you're trying to do is insert a link into an existing economy, right? And how well you let things come in and how well things come out of your time with the product, whatever it is that's the mark you make in an industry, whether it's a big link or a small link. That's up to you, really. Um, but for you now to take that, are we still talking about your dad in the bakery business, or your dad as a mechanic, or your dad as a contractual? Like, what is this now morphing into? What is it that you're starting to turn into?
Well, this was when my dad was it was after the bakery. He had already moved out to Arizona in Windy City Equipment. He was the business owner and the mechanic, for the company. People didn't call Windy City Equipment, which is the company name. They called Joel,
Hmm.
right? And so when I was thrown into the mix, it was, well, all right, call Joel or Joel's son, you know, and so it was, and I still get a little bit of that today, actually,
And that's okay.
as as it may, but yeah, oh yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
it's a testament to him and
that's
and
right.
and what he built. I'm incredibly proud of that, but yeah, that's who he was. I mean, and he's still a part of the company to this day. He pays the bills right now, and we joke all the time. I see the money coming in, he sees the money going out, but we make a good team. And it was at that point after I took the phone calls, that he started to really be able to take a step back, go to my brother's games, and leave everything in my hands. And then for doing that after a certain amount of time is when, you know that's when we both started to work really well together in a certain synergy,
Hmm.
because we understood where we were headed.
The flow.
So
Yeah.
bringing on employees was easier. Yeah. And we were still working out of my dad's garage at the time. We always said we didn't want to have an office or warehouse until we could buy it. We didn't want to rent it. So, at that point, um, we were working out of his garage. We brought on a couple of employees. I think we had three or four. And then finally, we had saved enough money to get a down payment going, and we bought our first commercial warehouse, and that was in 2013, I believe.
Okay. That there's a recent article that just came out from an Asian university discussing about the concept of flow and how flow is a real thing now that they try to categorize, and that's when a group of people together start to work together and their frequencies actually like and the physical electricity starts to jive on the same frequency. And we've all been there, whether it's in sports or whether it's in music or whether it's at work. You feel when the energies are starting to roll in the same direction, where things are just starting to fall into place and things start to become more automatic without a lot of thought, because you just are riding the wave now of energy that's getting created by your product or your work environment. Now, that flow is something that every business owner tries to hold on to for dear life, because there is disruptions. There's disruptions, right? And it's how your flow kind of navigates the blocks. But on that, we're just going to take a quick break from our sponsors. Thanks everyone for listening. This is an awesome conversation so far, Josh. I hope you're liking it.
Loving it.
Yeah, all right, we'll be right back with the CWB Association podcast.
The CWB Group is Canada's national welding certification organization. We're pleased to offer welder testing at our state-of-the-art facility in Nisku. We provide welders the opportunity to practice for and take a CSA W47.1 welder qualification test. Book your welder qualification test with Canada's welding experts. Give us a call today at 1-800-844-6790 or visit us online at cwbgroup.org to book your training or testing slot. The CWB Group. We are welding.
The CWB Association membership is new, improved, and focused on you. The CWB Association is offering a free membership with a full suite of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Become a member today. Register at cwbassociation.org.
All right, and we're back with the CWB Association podcast. I'm Max Ceron. We got Josh Zolin here from Windy City Equipment, author, writer, also does podcasts, and well, we're just having fun talking pasts here, and we got up to the point now where you just bought your first big thing, like the big deal. Now you're gonna that's a commitment to stepping up the game, right? And where square footage is can be either the you look at it in dollars it's gonna make you, or dollars that it's sinking you, because there's no such thing as net neutral in terms of real estate. Either you're going up or you're going down, because it's not free. How did you guys take that step? Like you're now, I don't know, did you go to school? Did you get some education on it, on economy, or did you go get a business thing, or is this now at this point still all self-taught?
No, this is at this point it's self-taught. I've always been, I shouldn't say I've always been. Okay, you could I've al- I love reading books
Okay.
now. In high
Okay.
school, you couldn't have paid me to read a book, but once once I understood the value of books, I guess you could say, by this point in my life that we're talking about now, I had just been I'd become a bookworm, right? I mean, this over here that you see is like, I don't know, a tenth of my bookshelf. I love books, and so every night after work, I'd immerse myself in something that I could use. I'd you know, recognize a book that had an association to business or industry. There were no specific books on my field, or even really the skilled trades for that
Mm-hmm.
matter, which, funny enough, is one of the reasons why I wrote "Blue is the New White." But yeah, so really self-taught, with the assistance from all the books, and I love to talk to people, right? People that are smarter than me, people that have been there, done that. So anytime I came across anyone in my industry, I would just try to have as much conversation with them as possible, befriend them, keep in contact with them, and really just pick their brain anytime that I could.
Yeah, and
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
definitely self-taught. Yeah.
So, I went to university for philosophy of all things, which is sometimes throws people a little bit off, because there's always like, how does philosophy help you in your life? It's like, dude, if you don't understand that question, you don't understand philosophy. So, I'm a
I
bookworm.
love philosophy,
Yeah,
by the
I got a
way.
huge library as well. It's something that I find that has been extremely valuable. It doesn't even matter what you read, to tell you the truth. It's those pathways in the brain that you exercise. They really get the inside of your head juicing, flowing, I guess. So
Yeah.
we're back to the point where you got the big company now, and you're still self-taught. You're feeling confident about this move. You guys are pumped. Uh, how did it go? How was that transition into moving into the big leagues?
Yeah. So when we first laid eyes on the building, it was beautiful, right? But we took one look at it and we were like, this is way too much space. I don't know what we're gonna do with all this. Kind of to your point, right? With
Hmm.
the, with the square footage and when it comes to real estate, what are we gonna do with all this? So we thought, okay, well, you know what? We'll rent some of it out, and it'll be fine. Not 2 weeks after owning that warehouse and that building, it was full, completely full. It's almost like now that we had the capacity, we took on the work to to fill it, and I mean it was almost instantaneous, and at that point I was going through, I think, an important transition in my life at that point. Once we were in a building, it felt so much more real, right? It felt like an actual company. We weren't working out of my dad's front room. I wasn't trying to talk over all the barking dogs when I was on the phone with a customer. They didn't think that we repaired equipment and dog sat for every one of our neighbors. So I really, at this point, and I was fully confident, right? I was like, okay, I've got this now. It's time to put the pedal to the metal and really, sink our teeth in. And so it was at that point, about a year later, that was 2013, 2014, that I took over as CEO for the company. And then from 2014 to 2018, I think we grew like, I don't 900%, something like that. I mean, it was ridiculous. In 2015, so at this point we were still, our niche was restaurant equipment, hot side restaurant equipment, ovens and fryers and stoves and things
Warmers,
like
all that
that.
stuff. Yeah.
That was our niche. Yeah, that's what we did. And all of our customers, for as long as I was with the company prior, had always asked us, well, when are you going to get into HVAC and refrigeration? We're in Arizona, right? Like, and my dad would be the first to tell you, even though he went to, HVAC and refrigeration school and he was certified, he'll be the first to tell you that he sucked at it, and he wanted to, yeah, he wanted to stick to what he was good at, which was fantastic. I mean, that's, great self awareness on his part. So in 2015, after I took over as CEO, we said, okay, well, let's sit down and actually think about this. And we hired a couple of the brightest minds, in my opinion, in the industry, um, and had them open up basically cold side department for us. And so, after that happened, I mean, our initial customer base was so strong that, I mean, we had so much work we couldn't even see straight right out the gate,
Hmm.
and from there it was a whirlwind. I mean, I probably blacked out from the year 2014 to 2018. I don't remember any of it. It was it was just
Activity.
so much so fast
Yeah.
activity, bringing on employees, bringing on, new customers. And I mean, during that time, we opened up branches. We have a branch in Tucson, Arizona, Houston, Texas, Albuquerque, New Mexico. We bought another commercial building in Tucson. We had to upgrade our commercial building here in Phoenix. I think that was 2017. We moved into a bigger building. We got a building in Houston, and I mean, it was just at that point it was a whirlwind, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of
Now it's a
brings
thing,
us
right?
to
It's a moving
today,
thing.
where we've
Yeah.
got now, right? It's and I liken it to, because of the growing a company is so the complexities, right? You talked about synergy and how important synergy is. And I need people out there to understand what happens with synergy through the growth, right? Because at any given point, like when it's just you running a business, it's just you. I wish I had a whiteboard, but
I got one
it's
behind me.
just you. So there's no gaps in communication, right? Once you bring one more person on, okay, so now you have direct communication back and forth. That's no big deal. You bring a third person on, right? And now you actually have not two lines of communication back and forth, but you've got four lines of communication, right? And then a sixth line of communication, because that third person has to communicate with
Hmm.
all the rest. And so that's 100% increase in complexity right then and there. And you add one more person, and that's another 50% increase in complexity. And you go down and down the line, and essentially what I'm saying is the complexity in the organization,
It's
or in
exponential
any
almost. Yeah.
organization, it's exponential, and it increases so much faster than anybody realizes. And that creates a huge disconnect and a huge disturbance in that synergy.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest, in my opinion, that's the biggest challenge of growing any business, is being able to keep all of that intact. It's like trying to build an airplane mid-flight, right?
Yeah, and the synergy, that energy that builds, um, there's so many variables to it. It's not just work skill, right? There's personal, relationships that you have. There's different levels of relationships between different employees, and as a manager, especially, or CEO, or top brass of anything, a lot of your job just becomes watching those situations play out and making sure that you can kind of control the energy a little bit, because sometimes you have a really good person but they just don't work right in that spot, and sometimes just moving them to a different location or different, role, you still can harness their ability or intelligence or whatever it is, and it'll be better for both parties, better for them and better for whatever they're coming out of, right?
Yep, that's absolutely right. And that's hard sometimes too when
Oh
you grow a
yeah.
business,
Mhm.
because you've got this premeditated thought usually of anybody that is early on in the company of, oh, okay, well, this person, they're a part of the original four, the original five, the original six, and they're going to be a huge part of this company one day. Except for when those complexities grow and you realize that that individual in the job or seat that they have, whatever it is that they're performing, just don't have the capacity to do it in the way that you hoped that they would. And then you're left with a very hard decision at
Yeah.
that point. And no matter how you slice it, right? Even if you got to put them in a different seat, it's going to be less responsibility. They're going to feel slighted. If you keep them in the same seat, your business is going to suffer. Or the third option is, get rid of them entirely, and that's hard too when you're talking about an original member.
That's right. The those complexities are kind of like a, you have to be passionate about those interactions to understand them. And what I had someone tell me once is that just because your 100% is 100% and you feel like this is what you can run at your capacity, it might be their 50%. And you're getting mad because you're like, why aren't you doing what I have these expectations in my mind to achieve? But those are your expectations. They're trying at 100 on their level, and their expectations are not yours. Maybe they're in the same pathway, perhaps, but it's almost unfair to expect other people to live up to your expectations.
That's right. That's right. They don't have the same skin in the game, right? They
That's
don't have
right.
the they just don't have that same outlook on the business as you do because, I mean, this business is, like my third child. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah. So now we're gonna fast forward. The business is going good. I think you guys are even like trading on the stock exchange now. Like, you guys got a stock number? Like, what's going on here?
No, 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 not quite there yet. I don't think you can pay me to go public, but no, we're doing okay. We're
Yeah.
definitely doing okay. We made the Inc. 5000 list, the fastest growing companies in America, the last 3 consecutive years. That hasn't come without its challenges, like
Hmm.
we were just talking about, but a hell of an accomplishment, to our team, and the people that I have in place now today in the company.
Well, it's easy to read the pride you have in your company. I feel like even in my limited research of you and your life, that the pride in your business is huge, and that's something that I don't think anyone should ever be ashamed of. You should be proud of accomplishments. That's kind of the point, So, um, at some point here, you decided I'm gonna write a book, and like, I mean, you said you weren't much of a reader as a kid. So usually people that don't read much aren't great writers either. But now you're reading lots. Did you dabble in online journalism? Did you dabble in writing long memes? I don't know. Like, how did you how did you get into, like, I'm gonna write a book?
Long memes. That's fantastic. That's a really good question. So in high school, I hated reading, but I loved writing.
Okay,
I know that sounds weird,
that's the
but
romantic in you then.
I get. You know what? Actually,
Mm-hmm.
that makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
now. Thanks. Um, yeah, I don't know what it was. I've always loved writing. I've enjoyed it. I had a personal blog for a little while online called Leader Unknown. I've since taken that down just because I can't give it the attention that it needs, these days. But yeah, that's I've always had a passion, I think, for writing. It's the best way that I can express myself. I don't know why. I guess it's maybe the amount of thought that I can put into it. Like we're sitting here talking on a podcast, but my brain is working 18 times faster than my mouth can
Mm-hmm.
speak,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know that. Sometimes when I try to verbalize my thoughts, it doesn't come out exactly the way that I want it to. But when I write it, there's almost nothing I can't say. So I yes, I have a lot of pride in what I do, and I saw the benefits and the opportunities, and I always asked myself throughout my entire career with Windy City, why is this part of the skilled trades never talked about? What how come when I was in high school, being a plumber or picking up a wrench in any way, shape, or form somehow devalued who I was as a person or my career? I was always pushed towards college. I was very vocal about not wanting to go to college for my own reasons. I was going to be a
Mm-hmm.
superstar stuntman, but um, it just it got me thinking. And once we started bringing on employees and hiring technicians, and I really started to see what I was up against with my competition and what they were being offered and the benefits packages that they had and all of this stuff, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So of course, me being a reader at the time, I was trying to find books and like, okay, well, how can I learn more about this? And I couldn't. It was unbelievable. Like, I mean, I could do some Google searches and stuff like that, but I couldn't pick up a material book that taught me about the benefits and opportunities that exist in the skilled trades. And so that's when I made the decision, hey, I should write something. And I'm the type of person that the goals and the challenges are what keep me going.
You're not gonna
That's
sit
that's
on your laurels.
right, exactly. And it was on my bucket list. I wanted to write a book, and so I was talking to my wife one night, and she was like, "Why don't you just do it? Stop talking about it and just do it." I was like, "Yeah, I suppose that makes a lot of sense." So So I did, and it was great, and I'm glad I did. It was a wonderful experience, and it's led to a lot of new connections, and hopefully one day it'll make a difference.
Well, even if it's going to, regardless if people have a good opinion or a bad opinion, there is, still the ingestion of information, and it made a difference to you because that also brings you to another level, which is going to affect your relationships going forward as well, right? So even just the creation of it, like the creation of any widget, is going to increase value somewhere, right? So I am a terrible writer. Maybe I'm not romantic. I don't. I love to read, but I find myself I'm very logical. I'm an extremely methodical thinker. I have like my entire brain compartmentalized. It's a weird thing. So when I write in these terrible blocks. It's almost like, like the Dewey Decimal System. Like, so like no one's gonna want to read that. But the 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 conversation that we started there, where you were looking for information about the skilled trades and the bigger picture of this branch of industry that doesn't really get talked about, even though there's millions of people that do it and people that make tons of money doing it. But it's like it's I heard a term called knowledge hoarding. It's a hoarding of this knowledge because like you don't want other people to know how to succeed in your gig, you know that I think is terrible for the industry, but it's something that we've had the ability to change forever, but no one has. It's a strange thing that it hasn't been written about when really society doesn't exist without it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So then, okay, so now we're here. We got the book. You and your career now, are you looking to stay on as your business guy? Are you looking to write more books? Once you
Mhm.
start writing books, I'm sure you're out there doing public tours now and speakings, and that whole game goes with it. Are you looking to be more of a mentor now for new people coming up that want to make the switch, or are you gonna try to balance it all? I guess.
That's that's a really good question. I really love your questions, by the way, Max.
Oh.
Really awesome. Um, so right now, my main focus, coincidentally, is my biggest challenge, right? And that's just my personality. That's what dictates me and who I am.
Hmm.
So my main focus is my business. We want to be collectively as a company. We want to be in 16 markets in the next 10 years, and that takes a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of doing things I've never done. So that gets my primary focus. Secondary to that is the book and the mission of the book, which is to introduce people into the skilled trades. Am I looking to be a mentor? Probably not a mentor. I am more than willing, and I have helped a lot of people
Hmm.
just answer questions and point them in the right direction. But as far as giving somebody the type of attention that they would need,
Rely
I
on
just
you. Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to commit to that, and that wouldn't be fair to them. So I can
Hmm.
point them in the right direction. I'll give anybody advice that that I can, but that's kind of where it ends. I do speaking engagements and gigs started to pick up quite a bit before COVID. I was going around the country speaking in Miami and Texas and Chicago and stuff like that. A couple of them got canceled. A couple of them changed to virtual. But that's fun because I feel like it can make an impact. Few high schools around the U.S. have adopted the book. Uh, either a few copies to keep in their school library, or some even went as far as to buy thousands of copies to hand out to their students, which I thought was a huge step in the right direction. Um, I enjoyed the process of writing a book. I enjoyed the satisfaction of creating an artifact,
Hmm.
that can live on. Whether it's known around the world or it's not, it's still something that somebody can hold in their hand and that will exist long after I'm gone. So I want to, throughout the rest of my life, write several more books. I've got them all up here,
Good.
and um, I think that I can, because that's the best way that I can communicate. I think that's how I can contribute the most value to just the people around me. Because at the end of the day, you know, my my main mission, how I consider myself successful, is number one, growing something that's bigger than myself, which I'm doing with Windy City Equipment, and inspiring others to be better than they were the day before. And, some days are better than others for me when giving advice,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but in the way of books and written communication, I think I have a lot I can add. So that's that's what I hope for.
That's where you're at now. You know, one of the key points that I've picked up as a theme throughout this whole interview is the desire to create an environment where you can work your ass off, basically. Because at the end of the day, there's no energy output without energy input. So like you got to put it in to get something out. Um, your book that you've written, the average person that's going to pick this up now, are they going to be looking at it, or did you have a vision of it being like a how-to guide for them? Like, I'm going to pick this up, and this is going to be like some self-help, inspirational books where it's step one, two, three, four, five, and then this should work, or is this more conceptual in terms of how you see the vibe or the feeling of business growth? Like, or is it, or are you trying to walk that line in between? Because there's very two different fields on business growth. You can go sit in a room and listen to a guy talk about numbers, and you know what? That'll work. For sure, it'll work. And then you can go talk to, I was in Russia for skills competition last year, and I got to listen to the cosmonaut, this Russian doctor, talk about stellar, flight. And he's telling this in the context of starting your own business. And I was like, this guy's amazing. But it was just all these like big, weird concepts, also super valuable, right? Where do you see yourself in there with this book?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mixture of the two. So really, the main concept of the book is to just open people's eyes, right? To shatter a perception that exists in society, and show people with facts and figures why that perception is wrong, and how they can go about um, taking steps in the right direction to living what their definition of success is,
Hmm.
which uses then the skilled trades as a perfect catalyst to achieve that, which it is in my opinion. And so it was a fine line I had to walk, because it's got to be, the main demographic of the book is like a high school age student, right? So I have to write it in a specific tone,
Yeah.
so that they'll understand, and it's not viewed as a how-to guide or a homework assignment, right? That's not what I wanted to portray. I wanted to talk to them like people. The teachers that made the biggest impact on me when I was growing up are the ones that talked to me like an adult, the ones that actually looked me in the eye and called
Spoke
me
in
an
your
asshole for
language.
cheating.
Hmm.
Really, I mean, and that's what it was. And I appreciated that, because nobody, everybody else would tiptoe around it. So yes, I used some questionable language in the book. That's by design. Um, Subsequently, it has prevented a few middle schools from buying the book, but that's okay. Maybe I'll do an edited copy for them. But I still had to include enough information to make it credible, right?
Hmm.
Because if I was going to use this type of candor and this language, um, and vocabulary, I couldn't just be some crazy guy rambling about how it's good to be in the skilled trades, right? And
Yeah.
so that was the line I was trying to walk. But a lot of it, yeah, is conceptual, because I use a lot of associations, to past experiences of others. I've got interviews in the book with that provide different perspectives for areas of the trades. Like, the whole thing isn't just, hey, pick up a hammer, right? The whole thing isn't turn a wrench. It's defining, what a skilled trade is, and the fact that no, you don't have to go to college to become successful, even though that's the narrative that you've been taught. That's just not the way that it is, especially in today's world. So I kind of just lay the groundwork for all the different areas that you can go into. Like, I interview Aaron Salo with XOI Technologies, he's a software company, right? But his software directly serves the skilled trade industries. And he has a skilled trade background by working in a factory, and all of his current employees have had hands-on work in the past. I mean, it's huge. It's a skilled trades adjacent industry, but it's still a part of the skilled trades, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
um, and then I interview another a friend of mine, Rich Maliki, who owns a service company in New Jersey. Similar story to mine. He took over as CEO, second generation. So it kind of goes into his background. I interview my regional manager now, Bethany. So she's a woman in the trades. Kind of get her expected perspective on women in the trades and why women, why we think that there's barriers for women to enter the trades and how that can be overcome. And so, trying to really hit all angles just to, let people know the truth,
Just a
really.
nice warm blanket of information.
Yeah, right, right.
And you knocked off like three of my questions there because I had, what was your geared audience? You always think about an audience and you have to gauge your audience when you speak, right? And I think you nailed it. You said there, try to hit them while they're still in high school, especially when their brains are still developing and they're probably
Hmm.
not getting a lot of that positive information towards the things around them. The academic side, which I love academia. I've gone down both paths, and I'm not going to diss academia, but I totally know its limitations. And I think that as a parent, if you're teaching your kids that they should go to university or college, fine, but also tell them the pitfalls. Be honest about this. You're not all going to get to be lawyers and make $1 million a year because you know what? It's not going to happen. Maybe one of you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, and it's the same for the skill trades. Put it out in front of them. There's these pluses, there's these minuses, but be fair. Lay it all out on the board. Everyone's different. 100 years ago we had it figured out, and we regressed as we got deeper into the Enlightenment age, where it was like, before it was like, oh, Billy doesn't like sitting at a desk, but he loves working with the sheep. Well, Billy's a shepherd now, and he's the best dang shepherd in town. Awesome, that's a good thing. We kind of tried to create this mold for a while, and now I think it's starting to break apart because well, because society just isn't like the reality of society just isn't that way. Like you need really intelligent people at every level, right? They need to
Yeah.
exist everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's about the ROI, right? Whether it's the skilled trades or whether it's a college education, university, whatever, what have you, it's all about the ROI. What can you get from that education, you know, to further your career, to push you closer to whatever your definition of success is,
Hmm.
because we can't all be measured the same way. And that's the problem in high school is that, a lot of times in today's society, kids are taught, look, if you don't go to college, you're going to end up working at a fast food place your entire life, and or bagging groceries or whatever it is. And no offense to the people that are doing that, I'm just saying, it's often used as an association. I
Hmm.
mean, look, I took a career placement test when I was in 11th grade, 12th grade, and it told me I should be a cab driver. I mean, and this is a true story. I'm not,
Hey
and
man, and there's cab drivers that make 100K a year. Like,
that's right. That's absolutely right. It's about the ROI, but nobody can make an intelligent decision if they don't have all of the options on the table for
hmm
them to choose from. And that is where the problem lies, right? Because the skilled trades are not, it's not even that they're talked down about, right? It's just that they're not often talked
they're
about.
not put on the table at
Everyone's
all. Yeah.
exactly. And that's the problem. If you want your students to realize success, then you have to give them the options to do so. You can't just put everyone, as you said, in a box and push them all through the same machine expecting the same result. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, we're just not built that way. As a human civilization, we've prided ourselves. We talk about the Egyptians and we talk about the Romans and we talk about these cultures that were completely divergent of the norm to create these awesome things.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden 1800s roll around and we decide, you know what, those are all bad ideas. Let's just they were pretty cool at that, but now, let's just churn them through this machine so that we can create a bunch of widgets, and and
Yep.
intelligent are not too bad, like, and that started in the 18th century, and it's going to be tough to shake. It's really going to be tough to shake.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a global realization, really. I mean, it takes people to just understand, what it is, independent thought,
Hmm.
reintroduce themselves to independent thought, and and it's not to the fault, I would say, of parents or educators, because most of them want what's best, right?
Hmm.
They just can't admit that they don't know what's best.
And society's not really built to give you those options.
Right.
I grew up in a socialist household. I come from a communist country in South America, and we were taught very young in the value of all work, which is like one of the fundamentals of socialism. That there's no gear that's not that's of less importance. Doesn't matter which gear you are in the watch, any one of them goes down. System the watch stops working. Right. That helped me with my life because I went to school for philosophy, and there's no work in that. That's just something I did for myself because I'm weird. And then I got into welding, and I kind of always knew that this is going to go somewhere. And I just tried to be the best welder I could be, which, at the time people were like, oh, it's a good paying job, but you're kind of an idiot. You're just a dumb dumb who likes to, weld. And I always hated that idea. I'm like, I went to university. I'm choosing to weld. There's a difference. I'm not forced to be here. I want to be here because I'm good at it. I'm liking what I do, and I'm taking pride in the things I'm making. And the things I'm making are products that you need. So how can you talk down to me when literally I'm building the things you need in society? And then I followed it through, right? I followed it through. Fast forward 30 years later, I'm working overseas. I'm in Africa. I'm in Russia. I'm all over the place. I'm doing all those things. And people are like, oh, what did you do with your career that was so different? Nothing. I was just a welder who worked my ass off and learned and listened and read and, took the free courses when the companies offered them and tried to. There's this path literally started from burning a rod in a shop in the north of my small town. There's no reason that that's not an available path for every human being. Like, there's literally no reason that you can't find that job. Like when I was a kid, my dad's friend was working at a Quiznos or like a sub place. He ended up, and people made fun of him because he's in his 40s and it's like, oh, you're working a sub place, oh, that crappy job. He owns five of them now, you know, and it's like, so he's the top of the Quiznos chain. Awesome. You're like, it is what it is, right?
Yep. No, and that's what an awesome story, by the way. That is really cool. And to your point about the philosophy, have you ever read the book Shop Class for Soulcraft?
I have it. I bought it at Chapters. I haven't read it yet, though. I just got it because
Oh
someone
my
else
gosh.
told me about it.
Just the way that you're talking and stuff like that, it just reminds me of the book because they take the skilled trades and they put a philosophical twist on it. And so you should definitely pick that up
It's
and
on
check
my
it
list.
out.
I'll do it over the Christmas season here.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And you're absolutely right, because it really, again, back to kind of our original conversation, right? It's not necessarily what you do, it's how you do it. It's how much effort you put forth. That's for me. If you would have asked me when I was 15, 16 years old if I was going to be fixing restaurant equipment, I would have laughed and laughed and laughed. But that wasn't the point, right? I
Hmm.
talk about this a lot with passion versus practicality. And because there's a lot of people out there that say they only want to do what they're passionate about because they'll never work a day in your life, and
That's
I
not
I
reality.
don't no it's not. And I don't agree with it, but I also think that there's a disconnect between what people think their passions are. A lot of people take their passions at face value, right? If I took my passions at face value, I would be a street racer right now. And that's the bottom line. That's what I loved to do when I was 16 years old is race cars, but it's not practical,
Hmm.
right? But the
Although I
my
still do
true
that, just so you know.
yeah, well, don't tell anyone. Um but but look, I mean the bottom line is at the end of the day, I love helping people. I love I love building things. I love a challenge. I love, just being responsible for taking pride in something that I built or fixed or done in any way, shape, or form. And, if more people I think would recognize those types of things, it'll be a whole lot easier for them to apply it to something practical like fixing fryers,
Hmm.
right? I get all of that. I got all of that by fixing a fryer, even though, it wasn't fun being elbow deep in grease every day. But, you know, those are the things you have to be willing to do to take you to the places that you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell the story to my students. There was a time in my late 20s, right before, or mid 20s, right before I started my first business, which I think I was 27 when I started my first business. I was going to work, and I was like the best welder in this shop, or I thought so, and I was getting paid well, and I was, I felt like I was on the top of the food chain for that role. And I would be crying, like I'd be pulling over on the way to work crying because I just didn't want to go to work. I just was losing it. I just felt like this was not right for me. Even though I was doing so well and making the money and all these things, and I had a couple kids, and everything, all the check boxes are checked off, but I was still incredibly sad about where I was. And I remember coming home, and my wife at the time was like, "Why are you so sad? Everything seems to be like good." And I was like, "I don't know. It's just like I feel like I'm not in control of my next step. Like I'm waking up tomorrow, and I don't have much of a say in that, And she told me, "Well, why don't you just start your own business?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, like." I did. I asked for a layoff for my company. So, like in Canada, we get laid off and then we get government benefits for a few months. So, I had a bit of a cushion there. So, I asked for a layoff, told my boss, I'm like, I want to start my own thing. And he was like, okay, go for it, man. Like, we hate to see you go. We love you. But, like, we can tell that your vibe's been down. And if this is something you want to do, you're that kind of guy, go do it. And I did it. But I needed to have those cries. My job needed to suck for a while, and I needed to see that I could push through the suck and get back on the charming side of it that I needed. But I had to make that step. It wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to arrive to me. I had to push through it, kind of like a bull in a china shop, because I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. But hey, whatever, I'm just going to go. And when I say it was my first business, because it didn't work out for me. It went all right, but it did collapse on me because I also made mistakes. But hey, that's also part of the challenge, right? And in a lot of ways, it made it almost more fun. Like, dang it, that one didn't work. The next one's going to do it, like.
Yep. Yeah. And two things come to mind. Number one, how do we know our limits if we don't push them?
Mhm.
And number two, the obstacle becomes the way,
Mhm.
right? As a fan of philosophy, I'm sure you know that one.
Mhm.
But it holds true, right? The first one is, we have to understand what we're capable of, and there's no other way to do that than going through the challenges and pushing ourselves as much as we can, and the obstacle becomes the way. Is That's the way that I've always looked at things, although I didn't really understand that that's what it was until I got into Stoic philosophy and I started to understand that a little bit better. But it resonates so much with me, right? Because it's
Mhm.
all about your point of view. If you
Perception.
look at the obstacle as a roadblock, it's going to be a roadblock. But if you look at the obstacle as just a step in the process, a necessary step in the process, it's going to contribute to your success. It's going to contribute to what you're pushing towards, that what you're trying to grow into. So it's all part of the same thing. And if you can remember those two things, there's almost nothing in the world that you can't do.
Yeah, it's like a weight that comes off your shoulders. I remember, and I'm gonna wrap. We've gone long, just so you know. Like I don't know how long you like to talk to. I can talk forever,
That's
but
all right.
but I'm sure the audience
Yeah,
is
me
gonna
too.
be like, "Hey, man, like it's been an hour." But um, I got a couple questions, but I want to bring up one thing before I get to the wrap up here, is that when I was a little kid, and I grew up in a weird house. Like there was war in my country. We came to Canada as refugees, and there was issues that obviously came with that. But I remember being a kid and asking my mom because of school. I was at school and they were talking about the meaning of life and what we were going to do. And we are going to, they have those conversations when you're in grade 4 or 5, like, where are you going to be when you grow up? And I didn't really even have an idea. And I remember coming home and asking my mom, being like, like, what's the meaning of life? Like, what's the point? You start having those little thoughts when you're a kid. And my mom sat me down and she looks at me and she goes, life is meaningless. We are all just dust floating through the cosmos, and nothing has meaning at all unless you give it meaning. So, whatever it is you decide to give meaning, that's meaningful. Period. And I don't know if there's a truer statement. People are like, man, that's dark. I'm like, no, because I can choose to give love. that doesn't mean that something deserves it inherently. It's my choice, right? Like I assign that meaning. And that's, I think, crucial to success. Because if you assign meaning to wanting to succeed, everything beneath it is just whatever. Because that's what you're going to do, right?
Yeah, fair point. And I'm beginning to see why you're a philosophy buff.
so, okay. So, the last couple questions. What about the people that don't have the drive? What Where's your stance on that? Because it's always a tricky thing to think about. There's people that will buy this book or books like it or this idea realm, and they're wanting to succeed, but they are not succeeding. You know, do you tell people, okay, you know what, maybe this is as high as you go, or just maybe look at your station, be happy? There's a lot of different ways to go through this evaluation of self. What would you say to the people that are struggling with understanding these concepts or maybe spinning their wheels a bit?
Hmm.
It's a tough one. I think about it all the time.
Yeah, no, that is a tough one, and I think that there's more than one answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a couple of things. Number one, it starts with self-evaluation, and it starts with, like you said, answering the question, what's meaningful to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the drive or motivation to do something that I say in the book, maybe that's a first indication that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a first indication that you should be looking somewhere else, to be able to do that. I mean, we had that conversation about passion versus practicality. And gosh, that can be split into a million and a half different ways with a million and a half different things. So there's no harm in taking a look around, taking a step back, and seeing what interests you. And if you're intent on moving forward, then it's the little things, right? The small victories. This is something that I had to use, that I still use to this day. I have a to-do list that that's pages and pages long. But sometimes I have to put something on the list just so I can check it off,
Mm-hmm.
just so I can look at it, and just so I can say, oh, okay, I did this, even though I did it before I even put it on the list. You know, but it's that mentality, right? It's that snowball effect. You have to get yourself started and get going. And then the third part of that is, I'm a big believer in gratitude. I'm a big believer in, you know look, the fact that you are alive, the fact that you are able to take the breath that you're taking now, to do the things that you're doing. I mean, we're owed nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're owed not. It could be argued that we aren't even owed the very air that we breathe.
Yeah.
Yet here we are breathing it, right? And when you break something down to that, on that level, it's just, I don't know. That's where I find the gratitude in life, and everything that I do, is that, hey, you know, I could have been a frog. I don't know. You,
Yeah.
you know,
Or a rock.
or a rock,
Yeah.
and I'm not. I'm a human being, and I get to choose, and the future is what I make it. It's entirely up to me with how I view it, because again, success looks different to different people, right? And success is going to look a whole lot different to, somebody in a third world country, and somebody in Canada, somebody in the US,
Absolutely. Hmm.
in all these different areas. But I don't know if you've ever read Man's Search for Meaning, but I have a lot that I take away from that book too, by Viktor Frankl, when he was in the concentration camps. And his objective, what kept him going, was that he had to tell the story, right? And yeah, it was probably the most gruesome and terrifying circumstance that somebody could be in. And he felt, anybody would feel like they aren't in control. But what kept him going was the fact that he was in control of his own
He
thoughts.
could still own that.
He could still own that, and
Yeah.
he still had that in his mind, that he could choose, how to view the circumstance that he was in. And I think that anybody struggling, to find the motivation for anything in my book, or anything in life, just needs to remember that, they are still the ones that get to choose the quality of their thoughts.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's self conversation. There's a term for it, but when you talk to yourself, self talk, I think is what they say, is crucial. Like, I mean, I'm almost silly sometimes where I'll like just sit around and talk to myself and be like, "You can do this. Like it's you got this." And there's no one
Yeah.
around. Like I'm just doing it to myself, pumping myself up for no reason. I'm sure people would think that's crazy, but it makes me feel better. Maybe like your little check marks because I'm more vocal. I'm not much of a writer, but those are my checkbox to myself, being like, you know what, you did that. That was good. We're happy with that. Hooray! You know, like pat yourself on the back. You know.
Yep.
All right, and now my last question, because I'm gonna get in trouble from my bosses for running long. So, my last question is, Josh Zolin, how old are you? That's part of the question.
34.
34. So you're pretty young. When are you done? When do you think it's enough? Do you have like a 50 years old, buy a yacht, live in a lake, or do you think that this is like we don't know where our career paths are going to go, but do you see maybe self-teaching someday or university? I don't know. Like kind of where do you see yourself in 20 years? What's the old Josh Zolan doing?
Good question. Um,
Cuz I don't know about you. I don't really think about that. I've asked a few people this question and some people are very clear about where they see their end game and I have like no idea where I'm going to be in 30 years. So I'm asking you like do you think you could lay it out or are you just going to ride that wave?
well, I mean, problem with me is I have a lot of games, right? And
Yeah.
and so to
Hustles. They're
talk
called
about an end
hustles.
game, yeah, if you're talking about Windy City equipment and running and growing this company, I'll probably take a step back in maybe 20 years,
Dad, you didn't hear
and
that. No.
yeah, right. No, and you know what,
Hmm.
and he's fine with that. Whether it's I have one of my daughters
Step
part of the
in.
company at
Hmm.
that time, or somebody else who's reliable, who wants to step in and who shares my same passions for the people and for the business and everything else. As far as the other things that I'm doing, as far as the things I talked about before, wanting to inspire other people to be
Continue
better than they were
writing.
the day
Yeah.
before, and writing and things, I'll never stop. I mean, that I'll be on my deathbed trying to give somebody advice, whether it's good or bad, and like, you know, um, but yeah, and that's really, yeah, I just, it's hard for me to think about because I thrive on the challenges
Yeah.
so much, and that,
And
you
how did the
know,
challenges ever stop? They're not going to stop.
right, right. What's life without challenge? That's the question that I think I need to answer throughout the course of my life is what is life without challenge? Because look, here's the bottom line too, is I've been very, very fortunate, to learn the things that I have, to do the things that I've done, and that's that's not lost on me. I've I'm blessed to say that I have achieved all the goals that I have set out for myself thus far. So the challenge becomes the next goal and the next thing, and to keep pushing myself, further and further and further. And I don't remember a time in my life that
You
I
didn't think
didn't
like that.
have
Yeah.
a challenge,
Yeah.
right? And so I just, I don't know.
I love it. No, that's a good answer because that's very valid. I don't know is valid, especially when you're a certain type of personality. Like I mean, I like we talked about earlier. I don't have much of a plan. I literally just got a new job at CW being a director for like the whole association for the country. And like 10 years ago, I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like even with the pandemic, this is something that I've been thinking about. Obviously, lots with the pandemic is a lot of people discussing about what we can't have and what we can't do and what we can't achieve during this pandemic time. But when I look around at the people that I respect, the people that I think are like got something going on, I don't know if they even noticed that there's a pandemic. Like you close one opportunity and they don't stop that energy at that door. Whatever energy was heading for that door just gets diverted into something else. And whatever that is. And like I mean, I know guys are CEOs of companies and they're now like they're making picnic tables in their backyard and selling those on freaking Etsy. Like literally you can't stop them from just doing something and being good at it. And and I think that's key, right? And that's like we talked about earlier, but your energy, synergy, your dedication to meaningfulness is just where are you going to put your energy? And for guys like you, I think you have a lot of energy. right? And that's just the way you were born, the way you're wired. And it's awesome to see that you're using it, right?
Yeah, no, I will say that as you get older and as you work harder, it's harder to find that energy, but you will.
You will,
You
yeah.
just got you just got to keep those challenges in front of you,
And
you know.
pride, that old man pride steps in too. Where you're like, God dang it, I'm gonna do this.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
All right, Josh. Well, it's been super fun having you on the show. I really appreciate it. I think the fans and the people listening are gonna love this episode too. So thanks, Josh, for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Max. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome, and I hope we can connect. And I'd like to follow your career, and let's hook up on Instagram or whatever the thing you're on. I'm probably on it too, and I'd like to see what's going on with you. You're a cool dude, and this is fun. This has been super fun.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Max. Thank you.
All right, and for all people listening, make sure you share and download this. It's on Stitcher, it's on iPod or what is it, iTunes, and it's on all the media platforms. I have a media team that sends this out for me, so thank you to them. Thank you to the CWB again for always supporting this podcast and for our sponsors. And yeah, I'll listen to you guys next time. Josh, you want to say hi or bye to anybody?
Yeah, just thank you so much for everybody listening. Hopefully, I added some value. But if not, just let me know. You can find me everywhere at Josh Zolin everywhere.
All right, that's Josh Zolin everywhere, and his books on Amazon if you want to find it, and all the major book retailers. So, all right, take care and goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to the CWB Association Welding Podcast with Max Ceron. If you enjoyed what you heard today, rate our podcast and visit us at cwbassociation.org to learn more. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like to learn about in the future. Produced by the CWB Group and presented by Max Ceron. This podcast serves to educate and connect the welding community. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.